Yo, what's up, guys? It's ATAP Talks here, coming back with no.
Okay, welcome back to another Minecraft YouTube video.
All right, look, I was trying one of those those YouTube intros, but I don't think that's appropriate.
Jacksepticeye YouTube
Um,
intro.
yeah. Anyway, um, yeah, welcome back to another installment in ATAP Talks. This is the third installment we're doing of
This
this.
is the third and final, and probably.
Yeah, no, this is actually
It's kind of sad.
last one. I mean, it's not saying much because we only did like two other ones before this, but
Yeah,
I guess that makes the perfect trilogy of these, episodes.
yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about our latest release, our second album, Everything is Also Strange. Also our final release for an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah, because we're both going off to kind of college in basically a few weeks.
Well, 2 days for me,
Well,
actually.
yeah, okay, you're dipping pretty soon. But
Yeah.
we decided to do a sort of big final album to send us and I guess you guys off.
Yeah, pretty much. And, we'll get into that more as this goes on. But to go over a couple things first, we are actually doing this before the album has released. So, day of this recording, the album is not actually out yet, which is the first time we've done this, and that's because since
We don't really have time because you're leaving
Yeah.
before the album actually releases.
so that's why we're doing this beforehand. But we'll speak in relative terms about the production and stuff as we
Yeah.
normally would.
We've been sort of sitting and listening and doing it for like weeks now, so I think we can probably speak on the songs. It's not like we haven't listened to them.
Yeah, true.
So I guess we'll start. Is there anything we should say before we get into the actual songs?
I mean,
I guess a bit of the history.
yeah, I think way to go about this, like before, we'll talk about the origins and sort of how we made it, the creative process, and recording and mixing and stuff, and then we'll go over the track list. This is most likely going to be a two-part episode because there's a lot to talk about here, like not just the songs, but also about other details too.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're probably splitting this into two parts. So if that is the case, then you are currently watching part one, where we're going to go over the origins and the creative process and I guess the first half of the album, the first 8 songs.
Yeah.
So
So the album originated not as an album. We just kind of finished, I guess, Simply, right? We just finished Simply Idiotic in June.
yeah, I mean, actually, I think in terms of like where this really kind of started, it actually does sort of go back to those days when we were making that first album. Because even though we already had all the songs that we were going to make, we already kind of laid out the songs that we were making. We had decided that.
Yeah.
I still had like plenty other ideas that I was working on at the time.
And we kind of back catalogued those and say, well, look, maybe we'll get to those at another point. And we also had another project with our friend and collaborator, Kayvon, aka Unknown Rillo, right? And we, back in the spring of 2023,
Yeah.
back in the spring of 2023, we had him over, and we recorded a demo of a song called Spring Break. And then over the next couple of weeks, we kind of made that into a full song. But at that point, when we'd made that song, we'd kind of already mapped out the blueprints for Simply Idiotic. And we were like, this doesn't really fit. And we were debating whether just releasing it on its own. But we kind of kept it on the back burner for about a year until we had decided to make another full album. And I've got a recording somewhere of us saying that we want this album. I got a recording before we started. I've got us saying that we want this to be like the biggest thing that we've ever done.
Yeah, I think especially on the last Talks episode we did where we talked about the November stuff, we kind of did talk about that at the end of that where we were saying like this was going to be a big project. And I mean,
Which is funny because we talked about that before we kind of made it.
yeah, true.
We only had like 3 or 4 songs at that point.
But you know, that was the idea.
Yeah, we knew what we
And,
wanted to do.
Yeah. So I guess I mean going back to last year a bit, you know, I was just kind of coming up with a bunch of ideas. You know, I had a bunch of random song ideas honestly, and a lot of them I think the thing with a lot of those ideas was that they were kind of hard to elaborate on, like to develop more.
Yeah.
And I think it was only like so few of those ideas I actually had that I think I was able to develop
Right.
into, you know, proper full length pieces.
Some of these ideas were like around for a while as well. Like the idea for Radio Wave, we had that before the conception of most of the songs on Simply Idiotic, right?
Yeah,
That was a song, but we kind of decided that it wasn't really fit for that album.
No, not really.
And I think that's kind of true, because I feel like this album is a lot more serious and more mature, in my opinion. I mean, there are still silly songs, but this is like, some of the subject matter is much more heavy.
Yeah, because I think with some of the songs that, you know, got conceptualized and then eventually went on to this project, it was about giving it more. I mean, it was about, I guess, addressing more things that I kind of feel more, you know, I take more issue with.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, like the 2 albums are kind of indicative of the 2 years of IB. I feel like the first year, year 12, was kind of fun and games and kind of silly, and the first album sort of reflected that, where our headspace was at. And then the second one, some of it's like really quite dark and moody and angry. I mean, some of them are bangers, but like some of it is also quite angry, and I feel like that reflects the pretty hard year that we had.
yeah, I mean, we'll get into more into that when we talk about the songs individually.
Right.
But you know, I think I guess yeah, back in that period of last year, I think something that really helped me try to develop my ideas more was that I got GarageBand on my phone, and I think doing that was a really helpful thing for me because I was actually able to sort of kind of create.
Yeah, for most of the songs you created like mini demos, right?
Yeah, a lot of the songs on this album are actually come from just these projects I made on my phone on GarageBand, and you know, just these little things I made with little, not a lot of elements, but
Yeah. But then that later I'd kind of help you develop. But this is the album, I think, where you kind of came into your own as a composer as well as a songwriter.
yeah, I think for this project, I mean, the majority of the time before this, you know, it was just sort of me just writing the lyrics and you doing like pretty much all the music. I mean, I had my little moments in the music part.
Yeah, you added touches and stuff, but primarily I kind of composed music to fit your lyrics. But now it was kind of, I mean, there are some exceptions. Like I think I wrote the chords for Strange and Radio Wave, I think.
Yeah.
And like I added stuff to your original ideas. I helped flesh them out. But this is where the kind of songs and the lyrics were being created in tandem.
Yeah, I think because since Simply Idiotic, I think my sort of musical imagination got a lot better. I think I was able to really develop those kinds of aspects on my own. Whereas
Yeah.
before, I was just writing the songs and I didn't really have an idea of what they were going to sound like. It was more just about, writing the songs that you were eventually going to figure out a way to put them into musical context.
Right, yeah. It was much more traditionally defined roles of songwriter and producer then, kind of, right? But with this album,
Yeah, I felt like I wanted to have like a bigger part in this because I feel like
yeah.
I don't know. I guess I sort of I don't know if I want to say I felt bad for putting most of the heavy lifting on you.
Well, it's funny you say that because I kind of felt bad that I was making most of the creative decisions. Like, I didn't want it to be me featuring Aren, right? I wanted it to
Yeah.
be ATAP. But it's been a really interesting dynamic this time around where we're co-composing, right? We're composing together. Like, you'll come with an idea and say, hey, I want these chords. And I'm like, those are cool. What if we added some more chords on the end of that? And for that example, that's what the chords for Get Back Into the Rhythm were. And I think it's just a kind of a cool dynamic bouncing ideas off each other. Where you've developed the more of the knowledge and the vocabulary to be a key player, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it definitely showed itself more than it did during the making of the last album because that was just more of me just like letting you kind of do your thing with my things and just seeing how that was going to turn out. And of course, I was happy with those results, but I think also in a way I felt like I didn't really do that much overall to kind of support it.
Right. So maybe this album has a more authentically ATAP sound.
Yeah, and I think that's...
I'm proud of it, and I'd say that this is a...
I think that makes this the more impressive project. I mean...
Well, when you have your way, the album's 2.5 hours. So, yeah. And yeah, I mean, again, it is long, it is large, and the projects for these songs are absolutely enormous. This is by far the biggest thing either one of us has ever done. And I'm super
no
proud
doubt.
of it.
So I think
Should we get into talking about the songs, or is there?
no, I think we still should go over the kind of process. I think so. So Simply Idiotic came out, and then after that, it was sort of this period where we were kind of making.
We didn't know what we wanted to do. We didn't know if we were going to make another album, right? We were, senior year of high school was kind of ramping up, and it was getting pretty difficult, and we didn't know, what we were going to do. So, like, in November, we did the November releases with some kind of spare song ideas that we had that wouldn't fit into... Because we had a lot of conflicting ideas for a while. We were like, should we release a mini EP? Should we do a bunch of singles? Should we jump straight into work on the next album? And while we were kind of figuring that stuff out, we did the November releases to kind of explore new things and see what we wanted our sound to be. And eventually, come December, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as we've already talked about all this really in the last episode.
Right.
But I think then after that period of working on those November songs, that's when we kind of started getting into, I guess, the start of the process of making this album because we did, I think it was also kind of intertwined with the making of the November releases songs a little bit, that we started conceptualizing some of the songs for this album.
Right. I mean, we already had the concepts for a couple, like Radio Wave, and I don't know if there are any other ones that we'd already thought of. For a couple, we pulled from old ideas, but so Radio Wave and Spring Break we kind of already had. But we decided to make a big thing. And so when we started working on Strange in December...
Actually, I think even before that, because I remember we were working on I think it was Get Back into the Rhythm. We were kind of making like a really early version of that song because I remember I had this
Right, yeah, we changed it later.
original idea for that song, and we'll go over this when we talk about that song, but it was quite different to how it is now.
Yeah, that's ages ago. I can't even remember that.
And also, to mention another thing, we were also working on this song called All I Want, which
Yeah, that's right.
was a song that could have actually made the album, but after we worked on it for a bit, I kind of felt like the song wasn't really reaching the potential I thought it had. Not to say I was not happy with
Yeah,
it,
it was a good song.
but it just wasn't really, cutting it for me, so we
No.
ended up scrapping it.
Yeah, so basically we spent a couple of months, toying around with ideas, making demos that were completely different from the songs that were eventually on the album.
Yeah, sort of in the midst of doing the November stuff, and then
Yeah.
towards the end of November, and I guess going to December. But then, later in December, I guess that's when we could say that's when it properly started, because that's when we started working on the song Everything Is Also Strange.
Right. And it took us, I think, 2 days to get that song down. And by the end of, we'll go into more about like how we made it and what with that when we talk about the actual songs. But we made that song, and was it at that point that we wanted to make we realized we wanted to make the album? Because I think I think it might have been before December that you came to me and said, I have this concept album idea.
Yeah, I think it was, but I'm not sure if I had decided on like the name of it being the same name as the song.
Right.
Because I kind of came up with that song before we came up with this overall name and stuff and whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so yeah, I think we may have made the song first, decided we liked it, and then you kind of came and showed me a draft of a track list. It may have only had like 12 songs on it at that point, I don't know. But you kind of came up with the idea that the thesis behind this album is strangeness and things not being good or right, and things feeling weird, things being off. And so Everything Is Also Strange is the kind of thesis statement of the album that kicks you off. It sets the tone for the rest of the songs.
yeah. And so then I guess, then that year, 2023 just kind of ended after that. And then we came into this year, which is where, we kind of started doing like proper sessions again for songs, even though we weren't able to do as many because it was a really busy time.
Yeah, we kind of did regular sessions up until about
Because
February.
for the first couple months of the year, it was, it was quite
fine.
a...
So we kind of did our regular Friday sessions. But things kind of went downhill in the year, not only because we had exams and like loads of coursework, but also just some stuff happened in our year that made it kind of difficult. I don't know how much we should go into that.
Yeah, no, we shouldn't say too much,
Okay.
but it did sort of upset the balance a little, and so for a while we didn't really
Either we didn't have time or we didn't kind of feel able to record stuff. And so we had a couple of months hiatus where we had an early version of Everything Is Also Strange. We had a very old demo of Get Back Into the Rhythm. We still had All I Want, and we had an idea for Radio Wave. And for a while that's what the album was. Until essentially last month, right? Or actually the month before that, in June, the end of June, when we got on summer vacation and were finally in the same country and decided we need to basically work on this a lot.
Yeah.
And so for several weeks, we kind of met up every day of the week for a long, long time. So kind of doing work days every day of the week. Eventually recording all of these songs. We've spent the last 4 days at the time of this recording mixing and mastering all of these songs. We spent like about half a week getting all the vocals done. So we've been at this for kind of a long time. And I don't know how you feel. It's kind of felt like a fever dream getting this album made, because it wasn't like, in Simply Idiotic, it was kind of a song per session, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of the ones took longer, but like you came over one evening, and then we bashed out Chili Sweet Green, and then that was Chili Sweet Green, right?
Basically. I mean, with this
album was kind of evolving.
Yeah, and I think also because, I mean, it was sort of rushed, I guess, because there wasn't really as much time to work on this as I had hoped for. Because if we had had more time to do it earlier in the year, then that really would have saved us a lot of
if we could have spread out the work
pressure we had. So this project was a bit rushed, I'd say. I mean, I think,
I don't think it sounds rushed.
No, but that's because, we were able to get the time necessary to adjust everything.
Yeah.
But
it's not we really came down to the wire making this. But I kind of really enjoyed the process of having a deadline.
Yeah, the process overall was still good. I mean, we still managed to do to accomplish what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the most important thing, because that was also the thing that I wanted to achieve, was to get this amount of songs done. And then
there was a while, kind of a couple of weeks ago, where we hadn't even gotten all the songs fully recorded. We had like drafts for all of them, but they weren't in their final states, and we were seriously considering, what are we gonna have to do? Are we gonna have to like cut some songs? Are we gonna have to like leave it with me to mix it and then release it?
It was a bit stressful.
Yeah, but I'm really glad that we got it done. Yeah, that makes me happy. It makes me glad. It's a different experience to Simply, because for Simply, we could have really taken our time with it. We could have released it whenever we wanted. It took 6 months. And I guess start to finish, this one took longer.
Yeah, I guess adding up all the individual time spent, it was definitely a longer thing. But, the sort of process of doing all the recording and coming up with all the elements, I mean, all of that was pretty, it was good. It was solid.
Yeah.
And
I like our creative process.
I think even with, like, my vocals, for example, this time around, I was sort of adopting a different style than what I had done previously, because for a lot of the songs we had done before, it was kind of like me sort of doing this talking, singing style,
right?
Which I think worked. It seemed appropriate for those songs, but I think for a lot of the ones on this
you really
album,
come into your own as a singer.
A lot of the songs on this album warranted a more, I guess, like natural, professional style.
Yeah, or like emphatic
which,
singing.
I tried, with my current range, I tried to really do my best there.
Yeah, and there's some really challenging stuff. What song would you say has the hardest vocals? Because Manipulator, you kind of have to scream.
Yeah, a lot of the songs, I think, well, I mean, it didn't really require me to sing it that way, but I felt it was appropriate for me to do it that way.
Yeah.
It just brought upon several challenges, and, having to retake that specific parts, several times,
Yeah, you guys don't realize how long vocals take. It is not one take. You have to do it a lot and stitch takes together. But I think we've already been talking for 25 minutes. Do you want to get into the actual album?
Um,
Unless there's anything else we need to talk about.
uh, I mean, with no, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is certainly a challenging process at times, especially when you have to take in all the factors of the time you have,
Yeah.
the range you have. There's a lot to consider. And I mean, also, you know, um, we we don't have like a professional studio. We're literally just making these songs. We made all these songs in Jacob's room.
Yeah, we're kids
With,
in my bedroom with a decent mic and a pop filter sitting at my desk. Like all of the instruments. This album was recorded entirely in my room, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we recorded it all through a kind of rubbish 2-channel audio interface or directly into GarageBand, and I guess that's kind of a facet of our sound, right? If we'd been recording it in the same studio as Daft Punk did Ram in, I don't think it would have sounded the same.
No, it wouldn't have. And I mean, you could argue that it might have sounded better that way, but that's not really the point.
No, and this album has, I think, both kind of tonally and sonically a bit of an edge to it, an edge that Simply Idiotic didn't have. So whilst I think, and this is my sort of musicology opinion, right? Whilst Simply Idiotic was kind of endearing because it was made in my bedroom or my sort of cobbled together spare room home studio, this album has an edge because it's very raw and it's very much two kids recording in a bedroom with bare bones gear, right? It kind of feels like, to me, it feels like Cross, the Justice album.
Yeah,
It's rough, it's gnarly, it's kind of rough around the edges, and I think that enhances the emotional quality about it, and some of the songs just being angry.
Yeah, I think just the one more thing I would like to add before we get into the songs. I think that's always been sort of one of the main points of this this band project. I think it has been making all these songs on this sort of limited setup, but still being able to prove that we can actually make something out of the things we have. And because we didn't really we didn't just like buy a bunch of equipment to help us. I mean, sure, we bought things that were a bit pricey, but
we bought some synthesizers and stuff, but it's not. If this was a video podcast, you could see the absolute state that the studio's in right now.
Yeah, it's a bit messy.
Yes,
but
some of the vocals were just recorded sitting down at my desk with a microphone. And I think
usually I would have done them standing up, but I wasn't really happy with how those takes were turning out, so we decided for me to sit down and record them instead, and I think overall that gave better results than if I had stood up and done them.
Yeah, it's pretty common to sit down doing studio vocals. But I think
I guess I can say that we didn't necessarily buy stuff to enhance the quality of the songs.
No, we have very bare bones gear. And I think the fact that our sound is very raw and very kind of, I wouldn't say primitive because that's not fair to either of us as songwriters, but like we have a not even grating sound. It's not like polished. Even if it does sound good, it's it sounds rough. And I feel like that's kind of intentional, because that it kind of enhances the emotional honesty of the stuff that we're singing about, right? If you're making a song where you're super angry, like Manipulator, I think it would have taken away from the effect if it was glitzy and in a studio, right? If it kind of sounded, but because of our the kind of rawness of our sound, I think it enhances the fact that we're angry. I don't know. That's a lot of sort of
No, I mean, yeah,
spiel.
I get what you're saying about it. I think I do understand and agree with it. Okay, so now,
Song time.
yeah,
Already done half an hour of the podcast. I haven't even started talking about the songs.
well, I think we've still given a lot of valuable information. So
No, yeah,
you know,
definitely. I'm not saying it was a waste. I'm
Okay.
just going to cut the whole thing.
So, starting from the beginning, of course, we have Everything Is Also Strange, the title track. First time we've made a song that shares the name with the name of the project.
Yeah, and I guess we felt that it was a good kind of thesis statement to set the tone for the rest of the album, so we called it Everything Is Also Strange.
I think something that I felt like I wanted to do for this album was definitely have a kind of different start than what Simply Idiotic had, because Simply Idiotic had Missing Those Days as its starting song.
And
which
that kind of lulls you into it rather than, like, snaps you out of your trance.
Yeah,
like
it
that.
just had a different mood. But with this being the starting song of this album, it's a more, it's a definitely more fast paced, fast moving.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing, really.
Yeah, this is, and it sort of introduces you to, I guess, what the sound of this album is, which is kind of, well, obviously not all, but it's angry, right? There's crunchy electric guitars, there's powerful bass, there's distorted electric pianos, and I guess the sound, this is a much more rock-inspired album than any of the later ones.
Yeah, this
Any of the
first
previous ones,
song
rather.
was definitely a bit more inspired, rock inspired. And I think one of my biggest inspirations for this song was Everlong, Foo Fighters.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I really, I felt like that song was a good song to kind of use as an inspiration, because I really felt like the feeling of it, this kind of fast moving thing,
Yeah.
was a good thing to work off of.
Yeah, it's a yeah, I think, and the lyrics as well kind of bring you into this new universe that we created, right? Where the tone is much less playful than Simply, is much angrier.
More serious.
Yeah, so I think it's a good introduction to a much more serious album. And a much more complex album, I think, as well. Both lyrically and also sonically. There is so much stuff that we crammed into that song. There's some stuff that you can't even hear. The final section where everything kind of breaks down was mental.
Yeah, the big bombastic ending.
This is also an album, just to talk about the music for a bit, that's dominated by guitars. There are a couple songs that don't have guitar, but most songs do. So I guess it's a sort of congratulations for learning guitar, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, you really worked on learning how to play that instrument, and I think that really came in handy with a lot of these songs, because it really added that more, extra feel to it. That
Right.
I think some of the songs on Simply didn't have, because you didn't know how to play it then.
They didn't have that extra texture, right? And yeah, so I think that's part of the main sound of this album is the guitar. That's the new sort of thing that we've added to our
Soundscape.
to our sonic universe, as some other artists call it. And I guess that also adds to it being much more mature, as the guitar, I guess, is a much more expressive instrument.
Yeah, you can definitely get a lot of sound variation with that. So it's
Yeah.
really quite a versatile thing.
Should we talk about the recording process?
Um, yeah, I guess. I mean, we do actually have like a little video we made, sort of compiling some of the moments from the process, and
I think we're
maybe
gonna put
we'll
that out.
release it at some point. We're not sure. It's just kind of we've just kind of had it since the times we worked on it. It was just a little thing Jacob made together. But yeah, I mean, I think this was one of the songs on this album that I think once we really figured out how we wanted to do it, it was pretty easy to do it, I think.
Yeah,
It
and
was.
it was interesting for me actually because this is the first song that you had kind of composed the idea of. I came up with the basic chord progression, but you really had the idea of what you wanted it to be, and it was interesting for me because the co-composing process would be kind of a process. I kind of had to learn to trust your judgment, right? Because the recording of Strange took 2 days, and the first day I really wasn't feeling it. I was like, this isn't good. I don't like it. Maybe this album's just going to be bad. I don't know. Okay, well, I wasn't that extreme. But then the next day, we finished it, and I was like, this is one of the best songs we've ever made. And it was kind of like that for a lot of songs. Like, She Betrayed Herself. While we were layering up all of the percussion, I was like, bro, I don't like this. This is bad. And then when we had all the percussion and bass in, I was like, this is great.
I think sometimes that's the thing with song ideas. I mean, you might not really get it at first when there's really not a lot to go off of, but I think as you keep expanding on it, as you add more, and it feels like it really blooms into something, then that's where you really like, okay, yeah, I think this is actually, this now.
Yeah, and I was right. It was a humbling experience for me because I really learned to trust your judgment as a producer, so that even if I don't understand an idea right away, eventually it will sound great.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of how it was with a lot of these.
Yeah, and that's happened on every song. Like, if I had doubts at the beginning, I was like, just wait. And then you added something that made everything fit together. And I think that's a humbling experience for me because I don't often get an experience to create and I don't have, like, the only say, right? So it's interesting for me to be able to bounce ideas off another composer, musician.
Anyway, back on topic.
Back on top, yeah, we're being tangential.
So, Strange, yeah, I don't know if there's really much else to say. I mean, I think for a lot of these songs, it just kind of speaks for itself. There isn't really much to kind of say, and I think
Do you want to talk about
Strange is one of them.
You want to talk about, like, what you're actually writing about?
Yeah, I mean, that would be an important thing to kind of go over, I guess, if anyone's interested. So, I guess, it is kind of just sort of from a first-person perspective, just kind of talking about what it feels like each day and how, the sort of atmosphere is just kind of mysterious and you don't really know what is sort of going on anymore.
Right.
There's a feeling of unknowing, but at the same time, that things are sort of going downhill a bit.
Right.
And I think with all of those things factored in, you just kind of start to believe that this, this reality has really gotten quite strange than what you'd normally perceive.
Was it inspired by anything?
Like other songs?
Yeah, but also, like, stuff in real life, because I don't know how much we want to talk about that.
I mean, sort of. I mean, it was sort of just me kind of, thinking about it in a weirder sense, kind of twisting the views a little bit. Not saying that they're necessarily my views, but
You're exploring that view of the world.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I think, in conclusion, it is a banger song.
Yeah, it's a good intro. I think it its job, and
Yeah.
gets you, I guess, kind of pumped for the rest of the album.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the fact that it's so layered and it's so busy, because at the final chorus, it's huge, right? I think that kind of brings you into the world of a lot of stuff, because a lot of these songs are very big. And we crammed a lot of stuff into this album, whether it's sounds, genres, instruments, techniques, vocals. It's a thick it's a thick album.
That's one way to put it.
I guess that kind of demonstrates that.
All right, so then we'll move on to the next song, which is Plastic People. And this song, this was one of those, garage band project songs I sort of made and then thought, hey, this might actually be a worthwhile idea.
Yeah.
And I think in the context of this album, it kind of made sense to have a song that was a bit more chilled out after that big, crazy, intro with Strange.
Yeah, it kind of brings you down. I think we do a good job of this album with kind of interspersing the chill songs with the more energetic songs.
Yeah, again, I guess, because, compared to Simply, Simply Idiotic, as we said before, sort of has a story to it, like narrative. I wasn't really seeking that same thing with this album, but I feel like just with my sort of natural ability as a storyteller, I feel like it just ended up crossing over into this album too, with the way I wanted the songs to be arranged, the order, just so it felt more, like it had more of a kind of emotional structure to it.
Yeah, so like they're all tied together and they all go together in like themes and feelings, right?
Yeah,
it's not a literal story.
It's not just a random order. It's more thought out, I guess.
Right.
But with Plastic People, it's sort of, I guess, kind of similar to how you've got like on Random Access Memories, you've got The Game of Love After Give Life Back to Music. It's kind of just a song that's just more about this this sort of vibe, I suppose, that's kind of just being created with those several elements of like, the stuff that you hear in the song.
Yeah, it's a more minimalist song on the production side. We had a bass, which was that the West Pest or the East Beast?
It was the East Beast.
Yeah, so we have a synthesizer called the East Beast, and we created a bass sound using that, and we had a couple of synths and pads, and I think a Wurlitzer sound. But other than that, that's basically it.
It was just all of these sort of elements just to create this kind of, a bit like a dreamy or airy atmosphere.
It's quite airy.
Something that would just kind of take you into a sort of different kind of plane.
Yeah, it's much, no.
Yeah,
it's much
so
more
fitting.
It's much more chilled.
But with this sort of idea of like, because I feel like some people might be confused when I'm talking about with Plastic People. I mean, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah,
it's just sort of like talking about this kind of. Well, I guess it's not really specific to anything in real life, but it's more about just a certain population that is just growing at an alarming rate, and something that we might need to be wary of because we don't know how destructive this could get.
What these kind of fake people, right? Not like in the sci-fi sense, but the people
who are just all very similar, very alike, kind of just carbon copies of each other.
People are losing individuality because we're all trying to fit in, right? Something kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I mean, I don't mean to really.
You're not like you're not like coming after any specific person, but it's just. Yeah, I like the feeling this song has, and
overall, it just has this, feeling of this kind of dreamscape,
Yeah, and I think this whole album is a kind of describes a dystopia, right?
I suppose. I mean, that's sort of what it feels like the world is becoming anyway. So it's kind of
Yeah.
laying out, what's happening. And
Yeah, if Simply Idiotic was the kind of utopic idea of me and you just kind of chilling in my bedroom making funky songs, then this is the kind of more serious adult utopia.
yeah, and also another thing I would like to add is that I feel like a lot of the time, songs kind of act as a sort of escape from reality.
Yeah.
But I think with the songs we were making for this album, I wanted to actually try to represent how these feel in real life. I guess especially with some of the more emotional songs where you really dwell on certain thoughts and emotions. Sometimes that takes a long time in real life to cope with.
Yeah.
And, I think that also is reflected with the length of the songs.
Yeah, I think that's right. This isn't like a quick escape. If you're listening to this album, you're really invested into the emotional character that we kind of... But it's long, it's serious, it's kind of dark and moody. It's everything that you wouldn't want kind of quick, escapist
Yeah, not really.
stuff to be.
Anyway, we keep going off topic.
Yeah, no, I know. But it's just interesting to talk about these songs.
Yeah, you're right. But, Plastic People, not much to say about it from my part. Just
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah, it's solid. I mean, the one last thing I'd like to say is that this is the first song that showed me how catchy your pre-choruses can be, because I think is this the one with the gunzang instrument in it?
Yeah, in the second pre-chorus.
Yeah, the almost more than the chorus, although the chorus is pretty catchy as well.
I mean, there isn't really much to the chorus, but...
Well, no, actually, there is, I think. You've got this kind of airy synth pads, and the bass is almost playing the melody, so that...
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more lyrically, since it's just me saying the phrase plastic people a couple of times.
Right, yeah.
Because I didn't really want the chorus to be, have a lot of singing in it. I felt it was maybe better to just let the instruments do the expression instead.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting having a kind of bass melody. And the instrumentation is really well done. But what the kind of a key element of this album, and for a lot of the songs, like Manipulator, for example, they have really catchy and really well done pre-choruses, which is super fun. I think we put a lot of effort into kind of building energy in those sections.
Yeah, I think that stuff just sort of came a little naturally too, I think. Like the ways to go about singing it with the instruments. I think for me it just...
Right.
It wasn't too hard to think of it, but yeah, it did require a little bit of attention.
Yeah, but yeah, overall, banger song.
All right, so moving on to Radio Wave. This is, I think, one of the more interesting ones, because this is an idea, I guess you could say this is one of the oldest songs on this album, because this idea goes back a long time
This
now.
idea goes back pre-Simply. Originally, this was going to be a song on Simply Idiotic, right? Before we finalized the track list.
Yeah, but I kind of felt like this song would not have fit onto that album.
No, you're
with
right.
all of those other songs that we put on there.
Well, I guess you kind of had the foresight to realize we were going to make a more serious album down the road.
I mean, when we also had ideas of doing an EP,
We would put that
we
on.
were, I think, saying that this should go on there, which I guess would have also worked. But, overall, I do think that it was better to have this be on this project.
And this was one of the ideas that came about as one of the first songs that we'd come up with the idea to. Like, when we first started out as a band, I think we wrote... I think Missing Those Days was... No, actually, How Much Longer Can This Keep Going On For was the first song that we wrote ever, right?
Yeah.
And I think Radio Wave was one of the next ones. But you hadn't written the lyrics, you had just come up with this grating idea of a dystopic robotic uprising.
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely this takes a lot of inspiration from Daft Punk, especially their
Human
works
After
on
All.
Human After All.
Yeah.
That album, which a lot of their songs were really more gritty and dark.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I think what you were trying to get to earlier, which I kind of cut you off, so sorry.
It's okay.
But this song has a grating sound. This is sort of hyper distortion. This sounds super. It's not literally metal, but it sounds metal. It sounds angry. It sounds scary. Like some of the bits are actually quite unnerving.
in a way that was done to, I think, represent what this song is about, because from the way I see it, it's kind of about, how we've got artificial intelligence coming about, and I think we're kind of forgetting that it is actually kind of a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this takeover that's beginning to happen with AI, and
Well, yeah, like so much of the internet now, if you search for anything, 30% of the images are AI generated, and sometimes you can't even tell. And sometimes I feel like we're kind of forgetting what it means to be human, right?
yeah, I think, and it also relates to, because there's also a lot of AI generated music coming out too,
Yeah.
which I think this song is also kind of
Talking about
relating to, in a sense.
it's kind of soulless.
But yeah, I think for the majority, it was just about making this, I guess, like sort of house, techno
Yeah, it's a banger song.
with a kind of outro and intro. Because it is kind of like this scenario of like a TV program getting hacked and these AI intercepting and then causing all this ruckus with their dance.
Right.
And then
I can only imagine the music video for this. That'd be great.
yeah, I would definitely make it hella scary.
Yeah,
But,
but it's it just the sound is very unnatural.
Yeah, I really wanted the voice, to kind of be a mixture of a lot of those voices that are in those Human After All Daft Punk songs.
Yeah,
Blending those together
like
to make
Technologic.
this voice that had a bit of a human feel to it, honestly. It is almost like a human voice being corrupted, which I guess is also how we recorded those vocals.
Yeah, and it's kind of unnerving in a way because we've got three different pitch shifted vocals, right? We've got a high, a mid, and a low one, right?
Yeah, so combining all those together just made this voice that is, it's... I mean,
and it's creepy because on
it
the
gives
one...
off a lot of different vibes.
Yeah, because you have one that's... You have a part of the voice that's almost infantile, right? You've got almost like a baby voice, then a voice that's slightly too deep for a human voice, so that's kind of weird. And then you've got the uncanny valley kind of really deep monster
and
voice.
I think
right?
all of that, it's kind of about how AI is really encompassing all of the human sort of characteristics.
Yeah, almost. So, yeah, you get into that uncanny valley of you can't tell what's human and machine anymore, right? So it's a scary song. I mean, it's a banger, but it's also
It's also got that dark message behind it.
Yeah. I really liked that one. And that was one of the most... Again, it was like, I didn't see the vision immediately. But having produced it now, I think it's really good.
Yeah, it's certainly one of my favorites, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really solid song.
Yeah, not much else to say about that one, so we'll move on to Electro Park.
Which kind of has a similar message to Radio Wave, right?
Yeah,
Or just kind of digital.
it's more about like the internet, kind of talking about how the internet used to be this sort of, I guess, fun place. You can hang out and stuff and do fun things, but now it's like a war zone, basically. You go in there, you might end up having a really bad time. And there's some especially dark themes, I think, like with, I guess, suicide, in that second verse, talking about how sometimes these situations can go so bad that someone might end up just taking their own life.
Yeah. So it's Yeah, I think you do quite a good job of hiding a really serious... Or not even hiding, but kind of meshing a really really serious song when you think about it, with kind of a sort of indie rock banger.
Yeah, for this song, I took a lot of inspiration from Gorillaz, from their kind of songs,
Yeah,
from
it kind of has a gorilla-esque sound.
Plastic Beach and Cracker Island. And yeah, I was definitely working off of that soundscape of having like these bright, synth chords and the drums and stuff.
Yeah, bright synth chords. We've got a pretty grating synth bass, right? And then also quite crunchy guitars.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, and I think those all work together to make a kind of simultaneously bright but kind of dark sound.
Yeah, it's sort of like I guess like a yin yang of both.
Yeah, and they go together to form. Well, I really like the song.
Yeah, and it's just kind of got like those similar things to Radio Wave, which is kind of why they're like a pair of songs, I guess. Yeah. And it definitely made sense to have them be back to back.
Yeah, they're kind of sister tracks.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of talking about the same thing.
But other than that,
yeah, I don't really know what to say about that one. Yeah, I think it's just a good song with a kind of dark message.
Yeah. So now we'll go to Spring Break.
Spring Break is, I guess that's the song with like the richest history.
Yeah, so this is our first collab that we've done. And I think, this was an idea we had that we wanted to have some kind of collaboration with another artist because we thought that'd be a cool idea to kind of mesh our thing with some other guy's thing. And we didn't really know who we were going to collab with because we don't really know a lot of people who are actually like...
Yeah, when we were at our school, we weren't like... We didn't really know... Well, we knew some musicians we wanted to collab with, but like... We hadn't found one that was the right one,
Yeah, and then eventually, our friend in our class ended up being the one that we decided to collab with, and he went and he wrote the majority of this song because he wrote the chorus and his parts.
Yeah.
And then during that session in Spring Break last year, he came over here to your house and we basically just created the first version of the song.
Yeah, we created the demo, right? And it was an incredible experience working with another artist because I felt like the three of us kind of made the creativity just kind of flow super quickly. So like instantaneously, you had written like your two verses and I had made the beat basically.
Yeah, it wasn't too complicated. I think because I think from looking at what what Kayvon had wrote and was kind of just going off of that a bit and going with the themes of what the song was going to be like, it turned out to be fairly simple.
Yeah, I don't think that's kind of the point.
And I think just to make this kind of fun sounding song with fun lyrics, instruments, and all that.
Yeah, I think this is kind of an exception to... Because up to that point, you've had 4 pretty serious, pretty dark songs. So I think it's a nice change of pace where you have a slightly more upbeat one.
Yeah, it's sort of like, just having that kind of one time in your life where you're really able to just, I don't know, get away from the troubles a bit and just go enjoy, time with your friends or whoever.
Yeah. And I guess we've kind of bookended the serious stuff by Spring Break and Rhythm, right?
Yeah, seems that way.
But honestly, I don't really have too much to say about that. It was just kind of a fun song that we did. I guess also my brother, Benjamin, collaborated and sang the chorus.
Your brother was there in that chorus part.
And he added a bit at the end. So he's credited on the song.
I don't really remember why I wanted to sound like like mojo on this song.
Yeah, you sounded like the French house duo Mojo.
I think because the song, to me, it just felt like one of their songs. And so I thought, why not just try and put on that same voice?
It works. I can't imagine the song without you singing in a Mojo voice.
Yeah, that's true. I think I'm going to have to sing the song like that every time now.
Exactly. Well, I like that because it's reminiscent of Baseball. Sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with Baseball, I was trying to sound like
Jazzy.
Jazz Emu. This song, I'm trying to sound like Mojo. So.
I think that they're kind of reminiscent of a... Not like a simpler time, but...
No, I think of a time where we had, like, discovered those guys and then wanted to kind of...
Tap into their feelings.
Yeah. But yeah, I think for Spring Break, that's all that needs to be said about that.
Yeah.
So now moving on to Won't Be the Same Without You. Oh boy, sadness.
Yeah, it was sad. There are a couple of, like, pretty sweet ballads on this album, and this is one of them, I think.
Honestly, it is a bit of a risky play to put this song right after Spring Break, but in a way, I wanted to do that to kind of represent how sometimes in real life, this kind of thing can just happen. You know, 1 second you're having the most fun time of your life, but then the next, you know, it could all come crashing down.
Yeah, something bad happens. Like, you'd be surprised how much changes in 15 minutes, kind of thing, right?
That's true. I mean, the changes can sometimes be so drastic, like you wouldn't even expect that kind of thing. But when it happens, I mean, it really could hit you in a way where you feel like that's all you can really think about.
Right.
And with this song, you know, it's kind of touching up on a matter that is very sort of personal. And this song, I feel like, I mean, I don't really relate this song to anyone, but I sort of wrote it with the idea of someone who, you know, you've really, you know, they've really been such a big part of your kind of life and stuff, and then when they're just gone, you know, it's just like it's not going to be the same, and it never will be the same.
So you're not writing about a person, but you're writing about a feeling that you felt with someone, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So it's not literally like about a person.
No, it's
it's
not.
about a relatable feeling, and actually, I think it's really well written because I can kind of relate to that feeling as well. I think everybody can. I think the instrumentation is really pretty.
Yeah, I feel like
it's a really beautiful song.
This is one of the songs where I feel like the lyrics and the instruments work together really well the most.
The harmony in the chords I really like. I was really excited when I wrote this one because I really enjoy the chord progression.
Yeah, I think that chord progression is really good.
It's really unconventional as well, and I think it's quite. I think it's kind of speaks to this album that we made a really kind of unconventional chord progression sound really beautiful. I think.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I see what you mean by that, and you know, I think with this song, it is sort of really drawn out because I feel like you know, as I said before, when this kind of thing happens, I feel like there really is a lot to think about, whether, you know, it was your fault, it was their fault. I mean, what is the truth behind all this? But you know at the end that the one thing that is the most true is that it won't be the same.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That is the ultimate kind of truth to it.
Yeah, it's really emotionally powerful. I think everybody can relate to the feelings that you're writing about.
Yeah, I think in terms of the emotional aspect, this song really got it for me. And I think also with that solo after the second chorus, I really like how that kind of feeling that has.
Yeah, it's
I think it's a really nice sounding thing.
That's got the kind of quite smooth synth, right?
Yeah. But you know, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of just one of those songs that speaks for itself. I mean,
yeah,
you just kind of have to listen to it to really understand, because I don't think talking about it does it justice.
No. And similarly with Normality, I guess.
Yeah, we'll just get into that one.
It's another kind of ballady song.
I guess this song is kind of like the Missing Those Days of this album. It's sort of about a similar thing with like missing the past. But
Yeah.
I think the difference between Missing Those Days and this, Missing Those Days was more about just being nostalgic and missing those days.
Right.
But this song more about I think wanting to go back because you don't like how things have turned out now, and it's kind of hard to accept what reality is like, so you want to go back to a time
Where things felt normal.
before you knew about how bad stuff really was. It's kind of like how I sing about in the song. It's like, knowing about like how many people are in like poor like living conditions and stuff.
Right. Yeah, so if missing those days was, well, back then was great, normality is now sucks, right?
Yeah, basically.
So kind of in keeping with the theme of the album. But it's another... The instrumentation on this one is interesting. It kind of it's kind of childlike, I think. There's the guitar, but there's also like a glockenspiel in there, right? I think it's kind of...
Yeah, I think that kind of helps with sort of giving it that, nostalgic feel to it.
Yeah.
And I mean, with this song was inspired by, it was this one song from a Pokemon game that I actually didn't know what it was called, but I could still remember the melody of it. And I thought about that when I was thinking of this song, and I was like, yeah, I think if it kind of had a similar feel to that, I think it would really convey the emotion.
Yeah. It also has a really strong pre-chorus as well, similar to other songs.
And a little more unintentionally, this song kind of inspired by the song Someone Like You by Adele.
Yeah, it has a similar chord progression, very different melody, a very different song, arguably.
Yeah, I think actually if you put the two choruses from each song side by side, they would sound very similar.
The Adele's melody would work over the chords.
Yeah.
But
we didn't intentionally mean to copy that.
No. What we do, which I guess is kind of an annoying trait, is that when we write a song, then when we're listening to the song, we'll sing another song's melody over the top of it.
I guess.
Which, I can't remember us doing that for any of the other songs.
Well, I mean, Get Back Into the Rhythm is... But we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, normality is just sort of overall it's about this, nostalgic and nice, and I mean, even I guess the kind of solo in the middle where it sort of builds and builds.
Yeah, I really like that section.
Until it gets back into the chorus and,
It's a big build.
Again, it's another song that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, it's another ballady song. I like that. I like the ballads on this album. They're really nice. Overall, it's a great song, I think.
Yeah.
So which brings us on to, I think, the last song we'll talk about in this part.
Can't Trust Anybody.
The 8th track. So we're kind of at the first 8 songs of the 16.
So, with Can't Trust Anybody, this was a song that I actually wasn't sure if it was going to make it onto this album. I think I was deliberating about the idea of this song for a while because I wasn't super confident in it working out.
Yeah, because we had we went into this album with 15 tracks, and we were like, we're gonna have a 8th track. We just don't know what it is yet. So let's start making the other ones, and we'll figure that one out later. And eventually, Eran came in with this idea of what if we did a kind of 80s inspired song. There are lots of kind of 80s elements, I think, or 90s, I guess.
Yeah, it was sort of more by like process of elimination kind of thing of just getting this song onto this album and then trying to develop it more. And I think the idea of making this more of like an 80s style song, it just sort of like, I don't know, it just kind of came to me, I guess. Like, I didn't really think about it that much, but I thought
It
that
works.
for the contents of the song, it would kind of support it more, make it stronger.
Yeah, because you have a very specific style of singing in this song, and we also did some cool vocal techniques to make the vocals distinct. We do a lot of that stuff on these songs.
Yeah, I guess this song kind of turned out to be like a song from like Michael Jackson's Bad album, where you kind of have like these drums and this bass line,
Yeah, the bass line is the
and
kind of main element, I think.
the sort of like 80s sounding synths and stuff.
Yeah, we made sure to go for a more sort of vintage aesthetic with the synths and the guitars and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, and also with my vocals too, and I think
Yeah.
that, you know, just with all that stuff together, I think it made a product that I am happy with, actually, more than I thought I could ever be happy with.
Yeah, it's a fun song, again with a kind of dark undertone message, but it's fun, and if you're not listening to the lyrics too closely, you kind of groove. A cool vocal technique that we did was layering your vocals with a track of you whispering the same words.
Yeah, you might actually be able to pick up on that when you listen to the song.
It's pretty subtle, but I think that it adds a kind of breathiness and sibilance to the kind of way that you're singing, because you're kind of singing in a nobody nobody nice, like a kind of Michael Jackson-esque. It sounds a bit like MJ, as in it's kind of exaggerated, right?
Yeah.
And so I think adding a bit of a whisper adds a bit of punch and tightness to those words.
Yeah, and I think it was also because I wanted to sort of make it feel like it was, you know, it was more personal. Like, I guess if I was literally singing it to you,
Right.
you know, if I was literally telling you that, you know, we can't trust anybody around, or, you know, whatever.
Oh yeah, maybe it even has the sort of added benefit of like kind of whispering to someone you can't trust anymore.
Yeah, just to give them that little notice before they go out there. And
Yeah, it kind of sounds more intimate if you're whispering.
I guess so.
Yeah, but overall, that's one of the more clean sounding tracks, I think.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of distortion on there.
not really.
So, is that kind of the end of part one, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to really add about that song, I think. So, for now, we're,
Gonna take a break and we'll see you in part two.
yeah.
Bye bye.